This is From Ring to Veil, a wedding planning podcast, the PNW's complete wedding resource, with your host, Kim Mills and Shannon Palmer.
Episode number 21, DJs and how to hire them for your wedding.
Do you know how to hire a DJ for your wedding?
Do you know the pros of hiring a DJ over a band?
Well, listen in as we talk to Alan Chitlik with Puget Sound DJ and get the answers to these questions and more. Thank you for joining us.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
So, Alan, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your company to start out with.
Puget Sound DJ is my company name. I would describe myself as a full-service DJ. I help people with the celebration of their wedding, of course, but all the sound that they need throughout the day. I get involved pretty heavily in all the planning of their day. Did my first wedding in 1997, so I've got a lot of experience in it, and I love what I do. It's just a really fun way to contribute to somebody's wedding.
So you've been doing this since 1997?
I did my first wedding in 1997. I was actually working at a corporate job back then, and I was always that music guy where I had all the CDs and I was going to all the concerts. And so my friend Annie, she called me on a Wednesday and she's like, Alan, my DJ just bailed. Can you DJ my wedding? And I was like, yes, I can, Annie. And so I went and I did it, and it went really well, and I found it to be quite rewarding. So I got started by doing a lot of my friends' weddings, and then I left my corporate job in 2004, and so this is what I've been doing full time since then.
Wow! Congratulations!
Nice. Thank you.
That's pretty good. So let's get into talking about what our couples need to know.
Sure.
Right? Okay. So first of all, how do you hire a DJ?
Well, that's a great question. What I would probably start with is sort of a broad set of research. You can look on different websites for reviews in particular, but sort of try and read what the DJs are saying about themselves and about their motivations and what their focus is to sort of help you narrow a little bit about those that you think are a good fit for you and what you want. And then I would probably try and have some phone conversations with people. And I'm not going to suggest a number, but obviously the more important you feel a DJ is, the more research you're going to do and the more people you're going to want to speak to. And then based on your phone calls, I would probably set up some appointments and go meet them for coffee or whatever you like and sort of get to know them. In my opinion, having a really good personality match with a DJ is essential for a couple because this is the person as your MC who's going to really be representing you on your day. And I think you want somebody who can reflect your style and your personality. And I think that's an important decision. So that's probably the logistics of how I would proceed. And then when you find one that you feel like is a really good match, grab him or her.
That seems like a continuing factor, and we've been talking to vendors that the couples need to really get to know their vendors and that they mesh well.
I think for those positions where a couple feels that it's important to have a good match, do the research. You know, it's really going to pay off in the end because what you want as a bride and a groom or bride and bride or groom and groom is to just be able to relax on your wedding day and just know that you've got this lineup of people that you respect and you admire that have your back. And yes, if that means you have to commit to 5 meetings or whatever to do some of that research, I think it's so worth it to have a really relaxed wedding day.
How important is it to listen to the DJ's music or set lists that they've put on their website?
Well, I think it varies. Some people are super passionate. Some couples are super passionate about their music. And some people are like, I just want a DJ that can throw a good party for me. And I would say that when I think about music from a couple's perspective, what I would want is confidence that the DJ was willing to listen to me and play what I wanted. There are some DJs who feel very confident that they know what's best for a couple. even more than the couple does. Oh. And so, behind the scenes in some of the DJ chat boards, I hear other DJs saying things like, well, this couple wanted me to play these 20 songs. Come on, don't they know that I'm the DJ? I know what I'm doing.
Right.
And there's another end of the spectrum where I'm here for the couple. Right. And I want to use that music to reflect a couple's personalities, starting while guests are being seated and going all the way through cocktail hour and dinner, and then certainly with the dancing. Mm-hmm. So if that was important to me, if music was important to me, I would want to hear from a DJ that he was committed to playing what I wanted and reflecting my personality through that music, not just some, I've got the latest Pitbull remix and I'll play it. You don't need to worry about this.
Right. Okay. So you're saying it's not that important, but if you want to get more of a feel of that DJ, then you probably would want to listen to their playlists.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why a DJ instead of like a band?
It is hard for me to recommend against a band. I love live music, and I've been to literally hundreds of concerts.
Right. So
there's an energy there and an experience that's tremendous. Mm-hmm. The things that I would want to think through if I were a couple considering a band is who's going to run the show.
Right.
Who's going to serve as MC, who's going to make sure that the buffet is ready before doing a grand entrance, who will serve as the actual MC. Mm-hmm. Is that the band leader? Is it not? I would want to know how much flexibility a band had on a given night. Some bands have a pretty vast repertoire, but it's also can't compare to the recorded music that a DJ brings. So if I see that a crowd is really into swing on a given night, or really into Latin on a given night, or Motown or something like that, I have an ability to just go with that genre that a band may not. They may not have that many songs in their repertoire. And I would certainly think through that issue about breaks. That a band sometimes needs to take 15 minutes off or something like that. What do they suggest for music for that? And then I guess there's also the ceremony issue. In most cases nowadays, as a DJ, I provide the sound for the ceremony and the reception. And you want at least some music while you're walking in and walking out. And you usually want amplification for your officiant to be well heard. Bands, by and large, I don't believe can provide that. So you want to make sure you have all those things covered as you think through which to have.
Yeah, because that was another one of our questions. Do you provide ceremony music too? Is that normal for a DJ to provide ceremony music? And like you said, the amplification for the mics and all that?
I think in today's environment, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, 80+% of the weddings that happen have ceremony and reception at the same place. And yes, I generally would expect to provide help with the ceremony. So in my opinion, I love figuring out what a couple wants with regard to the ceremony. Figuring out what do they want to have walking down the aisle, and what do they want to have when the bridesmaids and groomsmen are walking down the aisle, and matching that maybe with the music while guests are being seated. There's a lot of things that go into just even the ceremony music that are fun to make personal for that couple. But then, yes, the idea of amplifying the officiant and potentially a groom gives you the ability to have your guests hear everything. Right. And guests love that. Like the idea of sitting there, and if you're in the third row, you can't hear anything. You just it feels like you're wasting your time.
Right. So you were talking about being the MC. Do most DJs act as the MC? And if they do they prepare, do they go with the planner and prepare the timeline?
I would say for most DJs, if a couple is looking to hire a professional DJ, they will be able to play the music and they will be able to create a dance party. That is sort of the baseline. If you can't do that, you probably should not be a wedding DJ, right? So then you think about what else is somebody bringing to the table and how else are they going to help you with your wedding? And that whole area of planning a wedding with a couple and being the MC has certainly become an assumed role, I think, for most DJs. As part of that, I typically sit down with a very blank slate with a couple and I try and get to know them and I figure out what things do you want to do? What's your personality like? What activities do you want to have? What activities do you want to skip? And then I think about the venue and where different activities might take place. And I develop a very detailed timeline with a couple so that we know that cake will be over here, toast will be over there, dances will be over here, those kind of things. So we get all of that agreed upon. And then on the night of the wedding, I absolutely expect to be the MC and guide all the guests and let them know what they need to know. We're going to have toasts in 10 minutes. So please go get your champagne or this is how we're going to send people to the buffet or whatever it is. And this is the first dance and here's where this song came from. So I believe as an MC, you're really able to add a lot of personality and background to the night and allow those guests to really feel like they're a part of it.
And organization. So people aren't kind of wandering around thinking, okay, what's next? What do we do? Can we eat? I think that's very valuable because I remember weddings where you're just like, you walk in and don't know where to sit. You don't know what to do.
It's really awkward and uncomfortable when you're a guest in that situation. So I think guests crave information. And even if there's something that has caused things to be delayed or what have you, if you're sitting around, but at least you know that in 15 minutes we're going to do an entrance or in 20 minutes we're going to cut the cake or whatever is coming up next, you have a comfort level that you do not have if you've gotten zero information. And so I think that's really important. Your question about this was actually, do the DJs always serve as MC? And I would say that most of them do. Some of them don't though. Some of the DJs are very focused on playing their music almost as performance art. And they're really good at it. The club DJs can do some things in terms of mixing and spinning and all that kind of stuff that is phenomenal. But the dancing is not the entire element of the wedding night. And so to the extent that a couple finds the overall skill valuable, I would chat with DJs about what else they do. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, show me how you would introduce a toast. Show me how you would introduce my first dance or something like that. And then just hear the person do it and what their style is.
And I think being like on the fly kind of like that is a good indicator of how they're going to be on the night on that night.
Right. Because you have to be spontaneous on the microphone. Things come up. And you need to be able to speak on your feet. And in my case, I do spend a lot of time preparing in advance. So if I'm going to introduce the wedding party, for instance, I like to extract a funny story or two about each member of that party. And then I might say, now Sarah taught the bride how to enjoy anchovies on her pizza. Or, Bob always crushed the groom at this video game or something like that that's kind of amusing. And I will write those in advance so that I'm confident. But when I deliver them, I want it to feel fresh and spontaneous. And so to the extent that you can do that on the wedding night, it feels really comfortable, I think, for guests.
Nice. What's a range that our couples can kind of have in mind when they're looking at DJs?
That's a great question. I often compare DJ pricing to car pricing in the sense that, you can buy a $500 car and you can buy a $50,000 car, and they will both get you from one place to the other.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully, right. And so if you're making an important cross-country road trip, you may not want to steer yourself towards the $500 car. And in the DJ world, I would say that your basic starting DJ, maybe that you find on Craigslist or some other place, maybe starts around 500-ish or something like that. And for that, you've got somebody who hopefully will have good enough equipment and will have some experience doing DJ work. They may or may not be very skilled as an MC. They may or may not have insurance, legal music. When you hear the horror stories about somebody's DJ not showing up, most of the DJs that don't show up are in that economic range.
Right.
Okay.
Right?
It's more of like you get what you pay for, kind of in that sense.
There is a lot of that, and you rarely you rarely get what you don't pay for. Is that the right way to put that?
That's right.
So I would say then the rates go for DJs in this area. It starts at 500 and definitely can go to 2,000-3,000 for some of the really skilled, highly trained, best performers out there.
So talking about, prices, how long do you stay at the wedding typically for that price?
Well, that's a great question. Many DJs do quote themselves based on a 4-hour package.
Okay.
And part of that is a way to extract extra money by charging for the 5th hour. And there is a thing in the DJ world where people are going to be trying to upsell you. Oh, you want my ceremony package with that? Well, that's another $200. Oh, do you want my wireless microphones with that? Oh, that's another X. And I think that extra hour of overtime is certainly in that category. So I would look for a DJ that takes hourly sort of off the table and just tells you, I'm going to be there. I'm there for your reception. And as long as it's fun and as long as it's going, I'm there for you. Okay. In my opinion, a lot of the work that I do is in advance of a wedding, meeting with a couple, helping them plan, communicating with other vendors and things like that. So when I think about my hourly work on a given wedding, it's not the 4 or 5 hours on that Saturday. It's really a lot that went into that.
And I think a lot of couples don't really know how much goes on behind the scenes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like even with the planner or the florist or anything like that, they don't know how much planning goes into,
And that's really what you're paying for.
And that's a valid question for anybody to ask. Well, why do you charge what you do? What has gone into that rate?
Right.
And what are you doing during the week or whenever to help me?
So you will sit down with the couple and say, what songs do you want me to play? Do you have to have me to play? Or maybe even plan out a set list with them. You will do that kind of thing?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Okay.
And I think we were talking a little bit about the range. That is something that you get as you go higher into the range, is that a DJ that takes this role so seriously that they're committed to meeting with you and really helping you get the exact wedding that you want. So yeah, I absolutely help plan with a couple in terms of the music. I have online lists that give suggestions from virtually every activity that you're going to do at a wedding. So if you want suggestions on your first dance or the recessional after the ceremony or cake cutting. Now, a lot of couples don't know. They pick a song for cake cutting, but they didn't even think that. So I have all of those lists. And then I also have a set of lists for dancing. So if you know that you like Michael Jackson, well, look on this 80s list and you might say, oh, this Madonna song would go great with that, or this Prince song would, or whatever genre you feel like you enjoy. I have that all online for couples so they can listen to the songs and then pick. Must play, play if possible, do not play. And I guess that's probably another great thing to chat with your DJ about, is how they feel about songs that I might call polarizing. The Electric Slide, the Macarena, the Chicken Dance, Gangnam Style. And I believe that every couple should have their wishes respected with regard to those songs. And there are DJs who are out there marketing that I'm not a cheesy DJ and I'll never play the Macarena. And and if that's what a couple wants, great. But I've also had couples that Chicken Dance is a family tradition. And when I hit that song, I see people run to the dance floor. So, make sure that DJ is willing to respect whatever issues you have. It's your night and it's your right to choose.
Exactly.
Yes, and hopefully there's another song for the bouquet toss besides All the Single Ladies. Yeah. That's the only one.
All the Single Ladies. I don't think I'm familiar with that.
He's kidding, y'all.
You should see the look here.
Yeah.
Oh, the visuals don't translate on the podcast.
Here, let's get a picture. How about guests? Can they request songs?
That's a great question, and I think that is absolutely something that I would chat with about any DJ. In my case, I love guest requests because I think it's a great way to get everybody involved. So the music database that I have online is something that couples can share with their guests, and guests can make requests in advance themselves. So the couples can put that on their RSVP cards or their Facebook page or what have you. And I think it really helps the guests get a little bit excited. But unless a couple doesn't want me to, I like responding to guest requests that night too. It makes a guest feel particularly welcome, I think, when they come up and they've got an idea and they want to hear the song, and then we play it, and it gets people dancing. That's an exciting moment for a guest. So I want to encourage that.
And it also kind of motivates them to get out and dance. And so along that line, you said earlier that, if you notice the more the people dancing to the swing songs, that you'll do more swing or things like that. So how do you motivate a shy crowd?
Well, everybody has different techniques, but I would say in general, the idea of requests in advance helps me read that crowd even in advance. So, I know if they like the Pointer Sisters, I'm going to play that, or whatever they have. I would say the two biggest motivators for dancing, number one, playing good music, right? So you want to have a DJ that is really skilled at reading a crowd, knowing what to play, and knowing what to play when. Right. Like, you don't always want to break out Rihanna or Lady Gaga in the first 10 minutes of dancing.
Right.
You want to start a lot more universal and allow the guests of all ages to start with the dancing. So playing good music is one key. And then, in my opinion, where the bride in particular, but also sort of the groom, where they are physically, it has a great deal to do with how well the dancing is going to go. So if they're on the dance floor and enjoying themselves, that's where the guests are going to flock to. Right. And they're going to be kind of surrounding them. And especially because she's in probably a white dress and very visible. If that bride is on the dance floor having a great time, that is a key component to how successful dancing is going to be.
Right.
If she's out on a balcony or out on the patio or some other place, that's fine. It's her wedding night. And I'm not going to tell somebody, you have to stay here.
Right.
Because my reputation as a DJ is depending on it.
Right.
However, there is an absolute implication, or they go to some other place, the crowd will follow. And so you can imply that the dancing is not going to be as big. And if that's okay with you, great. Because it's your wedding. You should get what you want. There's other DJ tricks that people can play. you know, if you play a slow song, you'll get a certain number of people on the dance floor, and then you have to hit them really hard with a really good song, and they'll stay. You know, that's when you might break out Uptown Funk or something like that. I believe in conga lines, get the bride and the groom, you know, in the front. It makes for a great photo, makes for a great video if you're doing it. But then they can go all the way around the crowd, get them all involved, and then the conga line needs to end on the dance floor, and the couple needs to stay on the dance floor. And then you just play a great song to get that all rebuilt. I am not at all opposed to establishing a rapport with guests. So throughout the evening, I may have met some of them, or I may have spoken to them as I dismissed tables for the buffet. So I have a little credibility when I go up to them, and I might say, "Hey, what do you guys want to dance to?" Or ask them if there's something that will get them onto the dance floor. And there's other DJs who will have far more out there strategies to deal with that. And I think that just depends on a couple's personality and what they want.
Okay. I something that came to me was, is it typical or even acceptable to work with a band? Let's say somebody has a brother or sister that's in a band and they want to play a set or whatever at the reception. Would you work around them, you know, so that you could do ceremony and, you know, all the other music that's needed for the wedding?
Sure. I mean, the short answer to that is yeah, absolutely. And I think any good DJ would be happy to do that. And I am even more strongly an advocate of something like what you described, where there's somebody personal involved in that. I had a wedding last July where the groom had been part of a 4-person band. So we were there hours early on that day, setting up all the equipment, doing sound checks and things like that. And he and his bandmates did 2 songs sort of serenading the bride. Oh man. That's I mean, that was such a memorable moment. And, you know, I know neither one of them will ever forget it. So if there's a way that you can integrate the personal into that, do it. Okay. And make sure you have a DJ who's on board too.
Right. And I guess that would be something else to talk to your DJ about. Yeah. You know, especially if it's very important to you.
Yeah.
What time before the ceremony or reception do you get there to set up your equipment? And do you have all of your own equipment? Do you do lighting? Do you do special effects?
Sure. I think that for most professional DJs, having their own equipment is mandatory because you want something that you feel super comfortable in, that you know the nuances, you understand how everything works, how it's going to sound, and you can tweak and troubleshoot if you need to. So in my case, yeah, I've got separate systems that I would bring for a ceremony and for a reception.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering about that.
So that we do that. We do the ceremony, and then cocktail hour and reception, you can go immediately to it, and there's not a big delay while you're lugging speakers or things like that. There are few places where I am very interested in using their installed quote-unquote house sound system. The Georgetown Ballroom is one of them because they have this incredible speaker system there. But in general, I would way prefer to use my own things. Right. And it is a very legitimate question to ask a DJ, what kind of equipment do you have? But then be prepared for about 15 minutes because DJs we all love our equipment. So we'll be chatting with you about the Bose and the Sennheisers and the this and the that, and you'll be all, enough. In my case, I try to be there maybe 3 hours-ish in advance if I can, because I really like the idea of a relaxed setup, and I like not having any stress, and if something comes up, then I have some wiggle room to deal with it. I like to do things as anal as taping down all my cords with the fancy gaff tape so that it doesn't hurt the venue's floors, but certainly it makes sure that guests aren't going to step on it and it looks nice. Right. Those are the kind of things that you get if you take a nice long setup.
Special effects, lighting.
Oh yeah, lighting. So
is that normal for a DJ to offer that kind of stuff?
I think most DJs these days have some sort of uplighting, monograms, and almost every DJ has dance lighting because as a DJ, you are slightly judged on how well you pack and create and keep up a dance floor.
Sure, right.
So lights is an important element to that, I think. So I would, that's a great question to chat with a DJ about.
So thinking about the range, maybe a $500 one may not have the lighting system.
It would be very unlikely, or they may have some sort of additional package or something like that would include that. And then there's a few companies that's specifically what they do is lighting.
Right.
And so if you really love that idea of environmental lighting and you want to have it just so, that is completely worth exploring.
So I've got a little bit more questioning here. My husband's in a band and they have their own lighting system. And so they set the lights up to the music. So if you don't use your own lighting and they say, hire a lighting company, can you still use the lights with your music?
Great question. So that is sound activated, basically. And so, yeah, as long as the lights are working and turned to that setting, sound activated, then as long as the music gets to the microphone on those lights, yeah, that'll work great.
Okay.
So is there anything else a couple would need to know about your services or DJ services in general?
So I think one of the other things that I would want to encourage couples to evaluate is the extent to which a DJ seems like they're listening to you, that they are taking the time to understand you as a couple, that they're taking the time to really get you, and then you feel confident that they have the skills and the background to implement what you want. If I found that I was meeting with the DJ and he was trying to talk all the time or interrupting me or was trying to impose his I always do it this way agenda on me, I wouldn't really feel like I was getting a very customized experience. So that's probably one way in which I would evaluate a DJ.
And I think any vendor, you should use that evaluation. I mean, if
yeah, I agree. You should never let people interrupt you. Oh,
I mean, like if you're sitting at a table with even a planner and they're like, well, this is how I do it. We'll just do it this way because it's easier. I found it, instead of even trying to teach you that, in my years of blah, blah, blah. So I think that's a very good tip for any vendor if they're listening to them or not.
Yeah. One other thing that I would suggest too is try to understand how this professional, and in my case it would be a DJ, is improving themselves. What is their commitment to their craft? And do they take training? Do they go to workshops? Do they go to their national conferences? Things like that. And that helps you know that somebody's really committed if they're doing those sort of things. If they aren't, then they're essentially doing the same wedding over and over with the same skill set, but they're not really getting any better at it.
Right.
That's really important, I think.
That's in any kind of vendor, like any kind of profession like that. So
even as a hairstylist, I still have my license, but when I was working, you're always going to something and learning new because there's always something new out there.
There really is. And in the DJ world, I think a lot of that emphasis is on the planning element and on the MC element and then some of that execution where you are learning a little bit more about how to get those things done for a couple.
That was great. I think you give us some very valuable information and our listeners and our couples will gain so much knowledge from this and hopefully will help them in hiring their DJs.
That's great. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a fun little morning.
So Alan, please tell us where our listeners can find you.
Probably the best place to start is my website, PugetSoundDJ.com.
Easy.
And check out reviews, check out pictures, whatever you want on there, and give me a holler or write me an email or fill out my form and we'll get a conversation started.
We'll definitely put links in the show notes.
Sounds great.
thanks for talking to us today.
You're so welcome.
So you get a Masters of Ceremony, a set list to dance the night away, and a person to take care of making sure the reception runs without a hitch.
Thinking about DJs when we were thinking about DJs, I had no idea that they did so much. And I think there's many people that don't know that they take care of so much.
Right.
I mean, it's a dream.
Oh, I know. I mean, wouldn't you want a great DJ for your reception?
Of course, yes.
Seems like the DJ could be the answer to a stress-free reception.
I think so too. And, if we were to do this again, hey. And I think if you do parties too, anniversaries or anything like that.
Yeah, Sweet 16, quinceañeras.
Everything. A DJ could absolutely help you out with all that.
Yeah.
So make sure to check the show post for links. And thank you so much for listening.
Please subscribe to From Ring to Veil on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and leave us a review.
And until next time, no stress, no worries, keep calm and listen on.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. You can find us on Facebook, From Ring to Veil, on Twitter, @From Ring to Veil, and on our website, FromRingToVeil.com.